Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the THEATMASMR. Happy New Year, everyone. I hope it's off to a good start for all of you. I'm definitely feeling much better since the last episode, and it's nice to finally be back and get into the swing of things with so much more energy and being able to actually eat food. It's been a really rough December for me, but it is now January and I am just going to look forward and move on. I hope this year brings many episodes, hopefully in a timely manner, because 2022 did have a few delays, but all is well here, and I wish the same for you. In this episode, I'm back to talk about the beautiful sphere in the night sky that captures the attention of billions of people all over the world. It's the moon. I've been obsessed with the moon since I was a child, and I know that I'm not alone. I and many others share the same experience of chasing after the moon from the tiny window of a moving car on the highway. I know we're all curious about its many phases and changes, its movements across the sky, not to mention the heightened frenzy of chatter that happens around an eclipse. The presence of the moon, not just literally, but figuratively and culturally, cannot be overstated. Today, I will share some significations of the moon for and according to both astrologers and non-astrologers alike. If you missed the last episode, I talked about the Chaldean order. Do you remember how this specific ordering of the planets is determined? I'll give you a moment to think. If you don't remember or didn't catch it, this is the order of the planets in astrology based on the distance and speed of their orbits. With the moon being first in Chaldean order, or the fastest, I decided to make the moon my first foray into my understanding of each of the planets on this podcast. So first, let's get into a little bit of basic astronomical data on this luminary goddess. The moon's been in the game for a minute. The moon is said to be 4.6 billion years old. The moon goes by several names, including Luna, Selene in Latin, or Artemis in Greek. I said in Chaldean order the moon is the fastest. Do you remember how long it takes the moon to make a complete orbit around the Earth? 28 days. The moon is the 5th largest satellite in the solar system and the largest and most massive relative to the planet it orbits. It is larger than all known dwarf planets in the solar system. The moon is tidally locked to Earth, which, according to Wikipedia, means that the length of a full rotation of the moon on its own axis causes the same side of the moon to always face the Earth. From where we are, we can see 59% of the moon's surface. from Earth. Although the moon is much smaller than Earth and the sun, when in the sky, it appears that the moon and the sun are the same size, making it seem as though the sun is totally covered during a total solar eclipse. This is referred to as apparent size, and it's because the sun is so far from the Earth that they almost look pretty much the same size, although that is not true in actuality. What is amazing about the moon is that even if you don't give too much credit to the applicability of astrology yet, or whether you argue if it's real or not, the moon does have very visible, observable, and measurable effects on nature here on Earth. I think this allows some skeptics to at least sit with the idea that while the planets do not quote-unquote control us, they may have some not yet fully understood effects on our lives. But of course, astrology is not for everyone, and I'm not going to attempt to convince you otherwise today. We know that the moon affects the tides of the ocean, but did you know that there's a consistently observable increase in ER visits and accidents during the full moon phase, as well as on eclipses? Some animals respond to the changes the moon makes and allow it to be their monthly or seasonal planner, as changes in the moon may designate particular times to feed, mate, or relocate for some species of animals. I love this correlation of the moon as timekeeper, as reminder of a care, of need, of survival, because the moon is so often introduced through a feminine, a receptive, and a motherly lens. And on that note, before I jump too far ahead in detailing some keywords, I do want to mention that I will be quoting from modern and ancient astrologers, and even more so in the past than now. Many of the planets are described through this binary lens of male and female. A lot of it has to do with the gods and goddesses that are connected with these planets. But I also think it's perfectly okay to take some of the more gendered language with a little bit of a grain of salt, and also to try to concurrently understand the planets through these archetypal lenses. That said, let's begin with a quote from Vettius Valens, a 2nd century Hellenistic astrologer, who writes in his classic text, the Anthology, that the moon, lit by the reflection of the sun's light and possessing a borrowed light in a nativity, indicates man's life, body, the mother, conception, beauty, appearance, sight, living together as in legitimate marriage, nurture, the older brother, housekeeping, the queen, the mistress of the house, possessions, fortune, the city, the assembly of the people, gains, expenses, the household, voyages, travel and wanderings. It does not provide straight pathways because of Cancer. The moon rules the parts of the body as follows: the left eye, the stomach, the breasts, the breath, the spleen, the dura mater, the marrow. As a result, it causes dropsy, moist syndromes. Of materials, it rules silver and glass. It is of the night sect, green in color and salty in taste. I love the word reflection. The moon's lit by the reflection of the sun's light. And I love this because in so many ways, the moon can be seen as a mirror. In other modern translations of this passage, we can see a phrase that alludes to the moon casting out a so-called counterfeit light. This is because in reality, as Valen says, and as we know, though the moon shines brightly and beautifully, it doesn't actually emit any light of its own. The light that we see is the light of the sun being reflected back at us. The moon, according to Valens, also represents the crowd. If the moon is our emotive self, think of how much attention or large crowds can become dangerous or cause anxiety or bring about a change of character in some people. Some people tend to show off when they know people are looking, so on and so forth. I find it interesting alongside the fact that while the sun is often viewed as the self in a birth chart, the moon is also the self, albeit in different ways. If you remember in episode 2, I briefly introduced the concept of sect. Do you recall what that word means? Valens says, the moon is of the night sect. Hearing this, it's probably pretty straightforward, but just in case, sect has to do with the day and night, and the example I used in episode 2 was a question of whether you have a day chart or a night chart. The moon, quite obviously, is nocturnal and is of the night sect again. If your moon is in the lower half of the chart, that signifies the nighttime hours. And if so, congratulations, your moon is in or of sect. It is in the part of the chart where it, quote unquote, belongs or feels most comfortable. Valens also brings up travel. And a lot of Valens significations lay a lot of groundwork, although he is not the first, lay a lot of the groundwork for the interpretations that you see today in astrology. But going back to the travel, I think the moon is said to represent travel because the moon is the fastest of the visible planets. It travels through the signs very quickly and is usually in contact with a number of planets by various aspects on a regular basis. We'll talk about aspects more specifically in the future. But if you've heard of words like square, opposition, conjunction, so on and so forth, these are aspects, angular relationships between planets. The moon is in contact with a number of planets by aspect on a regular basis. If there was a planet that was quote-unquote booked and busy, the moon would be it, with all the appearances that she has. It takes about 2 days for the moon to enter and exit a sign, whizzing through all 30 degrees of each zodiac sign. the moon's here for a good time, not a long time. When it comes to the movement of the moon not being able to make straight pathways because of Cancer, this is not the ailment Cancer, but I assume that as the ruling planet of the sign of Cancer, as well as the movement of a literal crab, is unable to be directed in a straight line as the crab walks from side to side. When I think about trying to make an emotional decision, for instance, it definitely feels that way. Like being unable to think straight, or perhaps meandering between numerous options, things potentially being unclear. I don't know. That's just me. How does it feel for you? I'm a Cancer sun, so the moon is very, very important to me. And I definitely do consider myself an emotional person, so at least in my experience, definitely walking in a straight line is difficult, and actually quite literally walking in a straight line is a bit difficult for me now that I think about it. In her text, Astrology for Yourself, Demetra George, Queen Demetra George, get familiar with the name if you aren't already, writes that the action the moon takes is quote unquote, I emote. And here I would like to move into more of a modern interpretation of the moon. Again, this is from Demetra George, but from a more recent text of hers called Ancient Astrology in Theory and Practice, a Manual of Traditional Techniques. And this is from volume 1. And I'm eager to get through this book. It's quite big, so I'm taking my sweet time, but volume 2 was released just last year, if you're interested. However, in volume 1, for the moon, Demetra writes in chapter 3, the moon reflects the light of the sun to earth and represents a person's life, the entire physical body and conception. It is recognized for its humidifying qualities and is slightly warming. It indicates the mother and women who rule, legitimate marriage, the mistress of the house, the nurse, and matters of the household, the city and assemblies of people, and voyages and travel. It rules over the left eye, the stomach, breasts, spleen, and marrow, silver and glass, the color green, the salty taste, and Monday. And this is a great introduction or reintroduction, because I feel like this is common knowledge, but the days of the week are associated with planets, and you can kind of tell from some of the names of the days of the week and or planets themselves, but I'll continue. The poetic name of the moon, Selene, means the bright or flashing flame. The moon was linked to the Babylonian god Sin, who measured time. In Greece and Rome, the moon was envisioned as the goddess Selene, who watches over the sleep of mortals. Then, Artemis and Diana as the virgin huntress of the new moon and overseer of childbirth. The nature of the moon is to nourish. Its essence, according to Valens, is foresight. From a modern perspective, it is the archetype of the caretaker. End quotes. So here you can see the different names for the moon, where these names come from, who these names come from, and an introduction of the moon as caretaker, again as motherly, not only mirror, but also mother, which strikes a chord with me when I think about self-care and self-mothering and, pleasing your inner child and all of that necessary stuff that kind of comes as we get older and more aware. We kind of, I don't want to say have to, but I think it's important to take a look at how we can nurture our inner children as adults and perhaps fill some of the gaps that, were not met in our earlier years. It's quite interesting. The essence of the moon is foresight. I believe this is true when I think about how there are many full moon rituals that are said to awaken, to allow practitioners to tap into a deeper level of intuition than perhaps may be usual. I'm gonna go back just once. My eyes landed on Astrology for Yourself, which is open on the desk in front of me. And Demetra writes the skillful and unskillful expression of each of the planets. And here, I just want to make a note of it, that here, the skillful expression of the moon, keywords are nurturing, providing, protective, sensitive, intuitive. An unskillful expression of the moon, keywords are over emotional, insecure, fearful, and moody. I think that's really interesting to think about. There's no good planets, there's no bad planets. It's kind of like tarot. There are no good cards or bad cards. But there are dichotomies. There's a spectrum. And there are times when planets are in more of an advantageous or comfortable position, and there are times when they aren't. So I think it's really interesting to see what the moon evokes in us, what the moon can possibly mean through its position in a chart, for better or for worse. So I did want to just bring that up. Lastly, I have This is called The Encyclopedia of Astrology. This is by Nicholas DeVore. And under the entry for planetary, he talks about the moon. And it's going to take me some time to go through the pages of this because there isn't one page or entry on the moon itself. So I'll kind of be jumping around. So bear with me. But I think it's very interesting what we have here. So, planetary, ages of man. By the ancients, the planets were called chronocraters, or markers of time. It was presumed that different periods of life are ruled by different planets. And I'm not going to get into all of the planets here. I just want to focus on the parts that are on the moon. So, for some ancient astrologers, the moon was actually a marker of time for the first 4 years of life, ages 1 through 4. And the keyword that I see here is growth. And that makes me think of the moon's phases and how the moon can appear to be growing in the sky. And again, with all of the keywords surrounding mothering and childbirth and life, that seems very fitting. When it comes to ancient astrologers, as it is today or in any time, not everyone agrees. So I see here that there is another astrologer who has a different set of, duration of years for the moon, but still puts the moon first from ages 0 onward. Although this astrologer says 7. I wonder why. I'll have to do a little bit more research. On anatomy, Nicholas DeVore says the moon represents the substance of the body as distinguished from the vitality flowing through it. The alimentary canal, the child-bearing organs and functions, the lymphs, the sympathetic nervous system, the cerebellum, the lower ganglia. While I'm here, I do want to mention that there is astrology for health. If that sounds like something you're interested in. Let's see. Angels. The angel that is partnered with the moon here is Gabriel. Colors. He writes, all authorities, though variously, associate the colors of the spectrum with specific planets. In fact, there are almost as many versions as there are authorities. Nevertheless, the following planetary associations represent a consensus of opinion. So colors for the moon include white, pearl, opal, light, pale blues, iridescent, and silvery hues. Flavors. This is according to an astrologer whose name I hope I pronounced correctly, Sephariel. And this person says that flavors of the moon are odorless, insipid. So Valence gives us salty, insipid. That doesn't sound good. I don't know. But I also don't see another planet here where he references salt, so I wonder if that's just a translation thing, but let's continue. According to the same astrologer, when it comes to forms or shapes, the moon represents irregular curves, crooked lines. This reminds me of Valen's talk on the inability of the moon to move in a straight line. That the moon is round. We get into planetary hours. I don't want to go there right now. The moon, jewels or precious stones. Again, there's debate here, but we have a list. And the list says the moon is a reference. Sorry, the moon is associated with the jewels or precious stones of crystal, pearl, opal, moonstone, all milk white stones. For metals, silver, aluminum. Let's see. Objects and substances. Moon, utensils in common use in the laundry or in the silversmith's trade. Soft, smooth substances. Pathology or physical ailments. Moon, endocrine imbalance resulting in inflamed glands and defective eyesight, functional ailments and irregularities, allergies, mental instabilities, female disorders, emotional depression that impairs normal functioning, dropsy and excess fluidity, catarrhal infection of the mucous membranes. I have no idea what that means. I need to get up to date on my medical terminology. In matters of health, it is generally the significator of the bodily afflictions of its sign position. Okay, so this is saying look to the sign that the moon is in if you want to know more about parts of the body and the condition of their health. Should I go into it? Should I go into each of the signs? Okay, maybe. Let's see. Aries is the head. Moving down, Taurus is the neck. Gemini, arms. Cancer, chest. Leo, back and heart. Virgo, abdomen. Libra, loins, kidneys. Scorpio, organs of generation. Sagittarius, thighs. Capricorn, knees. Aquarius, legs. Pisces, feet. I'm sorry if that was too fast. Please feel free to go back and re-listen or listen on a slower playback speed. Anything else? There's actually quite a lot here. I didn't realize how many, but I'll stop on this last part about the psychology because I feel like this will actually touch on a bit of the more modern astrologers and some of the significations that you may see modern astrologers use for the moon. And I do think it's helpful to include that. So let's see what Nicholas says. Moon. Higher emotional faculties such as faith, hope, and charity, veneration, peace-loving, the instinctive mind, the desire nature with respect to material things, the external reactions to everyday affairs and to those pertaining to the home and domestic life, moods that fluctuate between the extremes of optimism and pessimism, ideas that are not abstract, ingenuity applicable to concrete purposes and practical ends, a mind that fluctuates and that lacks the ability to concentrate, hence easily influenced, sympathy, not compassion, respect for the old and regard for the young, suavity, kindness, love for animals, strong protective sense, and an inclination to defend those incapable of self-defense. Acute maternal instinct not based on sex. Modesty, timidity, economy, receptivity, imagination, impressionability, changeableness, fond of travel, personal magnetism, psychic qualities, extrasensory receptivity, lymphatic, changeful, plastic, wandering, romantic, visionary, frivolous, capricious, fanciful, unstable, procrastinating, lazy. Interesting. Did any of these words, any of these keywords in any of these quotes strike a chord with you? I'm quite curious, especially if you are, if the moon is one of your favorite planets in your chart or favorite placements, or you notice something during moon transits. This is so interesting. And I'm already thinking about my life and different events in my life while reading these keywords. So it's hard to kind of keep focus sometimes because I'm kind of just going off the cuff here. But I hope that this was insightful. I hope to bring a little bit more structure to the future episodes on each of the planets. But please let me know what it is that you would like to learn about each of the planets, and I'll introduce it and be careful to bring up specific keywords or significations if there's anything that I can research more deeply without going into very, very advanced topics, as I am still learning, and I hope you are learning something as well. We are encroaching on 40 minutes here, and I think I would like to close out this episode actually by bringing it back to the astronomy, because I had researched on Wikipedia about the first shall I say, publicly available, not drawings, but yes, I suppose sketches, drawings of the moon. And I don't mean ancients, as in like on, in the dirt or on cave walls, in fossils and so on and so forth. No. I mean like the 1500s. I wish I had the window open now. I don't. But when it comes to the more modern, how could I say, visual representations of the moon, and actually like naming each of the features of the moon, including its craters and all of that, I found some really, really interesting names. And a lot are Latin. And yeah, it just kind of really struck me. So I did just want to share that a bit. And let's look here. So I'll read it straight from Wiki, but it says, the surface of the moon has many features, including mountains and valleys, craters and maria, wide, flat areas that look like seas from a distance, but are probably solidified molten rock. So I'm going to read, or attempt to read, some of the words, all of which I believe are Latin, but there are English names. Here we go. Let's see. Some of these quote-unquote seas, mar and maria, that are not seas. We have mare anguis, serpent sea. We have mare cognitum, sea that has become known. Mare crisium, sea of crises. Mare frigoris, sea of cold. Mare humorum, sea of moisture. Reminds me of the moon as humid. Mare imbrium, sea of showers. Mare ingenii, sea of cleverness. Mare nectaris, sea of nectar. Mare nubium, sea of clouds. Mare serenitatis, sea of serenity. Mare tranquillitatis, sea of tranquility. Mare undarum, sea of waves. Mare vaporum, sea of vapors. Oceanus procellarum, ocean, ocean of storms. Here are some of the names of the lakes, quote unquote, not really lakes, but lakes on the moon. I'm assuming this is Lacus. Lacus estatis, lake of summer. Lacus autumni, lake of autumn. Lacus bonitatis, lake of goodness. And while you hear these names, think about the significations that you've heard in this episode. I think these are very closely correlated, and these names are so appropriate, even though these names were given such a long time ago. It really reminds me that astrology and astronomy were much, much more closely linked than they seem to be today, because I see so much overlap here. But I'll continue. Lacus doloris, lake of sorrow. Lacus felicitatis, lake of happiness. Lacus lenitatis, lake of softness. Lacus luxuriae, lake of luxury. Lacus mortis, lake of death. Lacus oblivionis, lake of forgetfulness. Lacus odi, lake of hatred. Lacus perseverantiae, lake of perseverance. I'm sorry, you Latin speakers must be cringing. Lacus solitudinis, lake of solitude. Lacus somniorum, lake of dreams. Lacus spe, lake of hope. Lacus temporis, lake of time. Lacus timoris, lake of fear. And lastly, paludes. So the quote-unquote bays of the moon. We have palus. So palus is the singular for marsh. Marsh. Palus epidemiarum, marsh of epidemics. Palus putredinis, marsh of decay. Palus somni, marsh of sleep. Sinus, bay. Sinus amoris, bay of love. Sinus asperitatis, bay of roughness. Sinus concordiae, bay of harmony. Sinus fidei, bay of trust. Sinus honoris, bay of honor. Sinus iridum, bay of rainbows. What an awesome name. Sinus successus, bay of success. I'm gonna leave it here because there's so much more. This wiki is quite long. Feel free to go through it yourself. You can find it under the page called List of Lunar Features. But a lot of these names and reading the Latin is quite beautiful and very insightful, and kind of an interesting way again to engage with astrology, but in a way that is scientific, that is both ancient and modern, and kind of bridges the gap a little bit more between these two very interesting worlds that I hope to explore more on this podcast. I'm going to leave it there for today. Again, I hope you have a wonderful 2023, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Thank you so much.